Look closely at the piece of wood right in front of you. To ordinary people, it looks fine. Flat, bright, dry, no problem at all. But for professional carpenters, that could be a warning sign of a project about to go seriously over budget. In 2026, millions of carpenters quietly stopped buying wood at Home Depot. Not because of high prices, not because of the big brand, but because of something invisible, which is the quality, is quietly changing. While construction demand skyrockets, supply is expedited and wood is dried quickly to get it on the shelves. And just 1 hour of poor material handling can cost you the entire profit of a day's work. In this video, we will dissect the reasons why seasoned professionals are turning their backs and how this could directly affect you. Don't rush to buy if you haven't watched the entire video yet. If you ask a seasoned carpenter, what is the biggest problem with mass-produced wood in 2026, they will not mention wood knots. Don't talk about the price. Don't mention the brand. They will say a word that sounds very gentle: humidity. And this is the part where everything starts to become uncomfortable. The demand for construction is increasing. DIY is booming. The supply chain must run faster than ever. What does that mean? The wood is kiln-dried faster. Push the schedule. Up to standard on paper, but not enough time to be truly stable. Sounds harmless? No way. The wood hasn't reached the proper dryness level, so it won't get damaged at the store. It deteriorates after you have completed the project. In the Home Depot air conditioning showroom, every piece of wood looks perfectly straight. But when you bring it into the real environment with changing humidity, heat, and day-night temperature differences, it starts to react. Shrink. Twist gently, curving gradually along the grain. And the funny thing is, you don't see it right away. 3 weeks later, the door starts to rub. 2 months later, the tabletop is no longer flat. The rainy season arrives, and the joints open up a few millimeters, enough for customers to call. The greater the amplitude of environmental humidity changes implies the stronger the warping. That's not a theory. That's the reality that professional craftsmen have to pay for. A batch of poor quality wood can ruin 10 to 20 years of reputation. Not because you did something wrong, but because the material was unstable from the beginning. Compared to some local lumber yards, where they allow the wood to rest longer, storing it in an environment close to actual usage conditions, the mass production model prioritizes speed. And speed always comes at a price. Wood that hasn't reached the right dryness is a ticking time bomb. You finished today. It exploded a few months later. And if humidity is the invisible killer, then what you see with your eyes, the wood eyes, the twisted grains, the cracks, is an even more thorny story. If you want to peel back each layer of this story, remember to follow the channel, because the next part will truly leave many in the industry speechless. Now, let's talk about something that everyone sees, but not everyone understands: wood knots. You stand in front of the wood shelf at Home Depot, looking at a board with a few round knots. It looks pretty artistic, doesn't it? Many people even like it because it has character. But in the world of professional carpenters, character sometimes means trouble. Each knot in the wood is essentially a point where the grain is interrupted, no longer a continuous fiber structure. When subjected to stress, temperature changes, and humidity, these points react first. And here's something few people say outright. A large dead knot near the edge of the wood panel can be where the crack starts. At first, it's just a small crack. After a few cycles of hot and cold, wet and dry, it gradually spreads. Not noisy, no warning, but enough to weaken the entire structure. The novice sees a small flaw. The craftsman sees a crack in the future. The spiral pattern is the same. It looks beautiful, but the more twisted the grain, the more uneven the force distribution. When wood shrinks, it doesn't shrink straight, it twists in an uncontrollable direction. And then you spend hours adjusting, shimming, reinforcing. Just choosing 5 to 10 wrong pieces in a bulk shipment can cost you an entire session to process. For a professional worker, that's not a bother at all. That's profit evaporating. Compared to many local lumber yards where they early reject boards with dense knots or overly complex grain, the mass retail model only requires not exceeding the standard to get on the shelves. Standard maybe. Long-term stability. Not necessarily. The wood that looks beautiful today may not withstand the first winter. And if the wood grain is something you can see, then the even more controversial thing is the classification label stuck on it. Believe me, the next part will really make many people in the industry uncomfortable. If you're finding these things familiar with your own experiences, keep following the channel because we still have a few more layers to peel back. This is the part that made many carpenters in 2026 decide to turn their backs. On the shelf you see two pieces of wood. One board is cheaper by a few dozen thousand. You think, the difference is just a small amount, and so you nodded. But the trap doesn't lie in the number on the bill. It lies in what happens afterward. When you start the construction, you notice that the wood panel is slightly warped. Not much, just a little. You took 15 minutes to adjust. Then comes the cutting where you have to avoid a cluster of eyes that are out of place. Add 20 minutes to measure again. After assembling, discovered one edge was not tight due to a twisted grain. Reinforce it more. Add more. Adjust it. An hour passes. And this is where many people overlook 1 hour of poor material handling can swallow up the profit of an entire day's work. For DIYers, it's exhausting and frustrating. For professional contractors, it's cash going up in smoke. Home Depot didn't do anything wrong technically. They sell according to standards at market prices, optimizing inventory turnover. But the mass market model always has one rule prioritizing quantity over selectivity. Meanwhile, many local lumber yards, although a bit more expensive, save you the most valuable thing: time. And there's one more annoying thing. When the construction starts to deteriorate after 6 months or a year, no one will refund you because you chose the cheaper panel. No one says, "Oh, it's because of the retail-grade wood." The customer calls you. The low price at the checkout is not the real cost. The real cost appears when the construction starts to deteriorate. A difference of a few tens of thousands can turn into repair costs of millions. Or worse, losing customers for the long term. So when millions of carpenters no longer buy wood at Home Depot in 2026, they don't react emotionally. They calculate it. They look at the life cycle cost, not the price on the label. And if you think that's the whole issue, you're mistaken. There is another factor that makes everything even riskier: the way the wood is displayed and transported. If you want to continue unraveling this story to its core, just follow the channel. The next part will really make many people reconsider how they buy wood. There is one thing that very few people say outright: the display environment can deceive you. You step into Home Depot. The space is large, clean, the air conditioner is cool and refreshing. Humidity is controlled. The white light shines directly on each grain of wood. Everything looks perfect. Each one is straight, sharp edges. The surface is dry. You look along the wooden body, it looks fine. A sense of reassurance appears immediately. But here's the interesting part: wood in a stable environment does not react strongly. It's sleeping. The problem is it doesn't live there forever. When you bring it back to a real project, a house under construction, a garage, a backyard, where there is sunlight, wind, moisture, and temperature fluctuations between day and night, the wood begins to awaken. It reabsorbs moisture. Uneven expansion. Shrink along each fiber. And the rule is very simple. The greater the environmental difference leads to the faster the deformation and the harder it is to control. In the showroom, humidity can be stable around a certain level. But in real life, rainy season, dry season, 38-degree heat, deep cold nights. All of these are shocks that wood must adapt to. And what if it hasn't had enough time to stabilize before hitting the shelves? You guessed it, right? Compared to the mass-produced model, many local wood yards look less dazzling. No perfect lighting, no air conditioning. The wood is stacked, covered, and naturally ventilated. It may not look as beautiful, but they prioritize something else. Wood gradually adapts to real conditions, less environmental shock when put into use. To put it bluntly, a piece of wood that looks great on the shelf does not mean it will remain stable after 6 months. And that's why many carpenters in 2026 began to doubt this seemingly harmless thing. An overly ideal display space can sometimes be a warning sign. But if you think that just the display environment is risky enough, then there's one final piece that makes many craftsmen decide to completely stop mass purchasing, delivery, and loss of control. If you're starting to look at wooden shelves differently, just keep following the channel. The next part really touches on the pain points of the profession. It sounds very convenient. You order online. Choose the correct size. Payment completed. The truck delivers it right to the site. No need to sift through each sheet. Not wasting half an hour standing between the wooden shelves. Too reasonable. And precisely because it was too reasonable, many carpenters in 2026 began to be cautious. The first truth: when you place a large order, you lose the right to choose each individual piece. In the real world of the woodworking industry, the straightest boards, the most beautiful grains, and the ones with the fewest knots are usually chosen first by those who come in person. That is a natural instinct. Everyone wants to choose the best part. So when's your online order prepared? The system doesn't inspect each piece for you. It only ensures the right quantity and the correct size. Enough 50 sheets. Check. Correct 2x4 check. The quality of each sheet depends on the rest. And the rest are often the ones that have been overlooked. Sounds a bit bitter, but that's the reality that many workers have experienced at least once, and just once is enough to remember. Not to mention, the delivered wood is often tightly bundled, quickly stacked, and transported through multiple stages. Just a little too tight of a strap, a slight misalignment, or leaving it outside for a few hours under the scorching sun, and the wood starts to react. Slightly bent in the middle, warped at the edge, gently twist along the grain. When the truck arrives, at first glance, it may still seem fine. But after a few days of being released from the bindings, the wood starts to reveal its true shape. And at that point, you had already planned the construction. Compared to many local lumber yards, where you can request specific selections according to your needs, or at least talk directly with the person preparing the goods, the mass delivery model operates on the logic of warehousing, not the logic of the craftsman. And here is the crux. Losing control over the materials also means betting the entire project. For a novice, that risk might be acceptable. For a professional craftsman, that's non-negotiable. Because when the project encounters a problem, no one asks, "Did you choose it, or was it assigned?" They only ask, "Why is it bent?" And that's why more and more people in the profession are returning to the old model, where they can touch, rotate, inspect, and decide on each piece of wood. If you find yourself having bet without realizing it, perhaps you understand why this trend is spreading. In the next section, we will talk about where many craftsmen are returning, not because it's cheap, but for something even more important: trust. If you want to continue delving into the lesser-known aspects of the woodworking industry, stay tuned to the channel. The final part will piece the entire picture together. After all that we have just unpacked, moisture, wood knots, grading, stamps, mass delivery, there is a very clear question. So where do they go? The answer sounds old-fashioned: the local lumber yard. Not because it's cheaper. In fact, many places are even a few percent higher. But what they seek is not the number on the price tag. The first thing: trust and responsibility. At the local lumber yard, you don't talk to a system. You talk to a person. You can ask, "Where is this batch from? How long is the drying process? Suitable for making doors or frames?" And the seller usually knows the answer. Not reading from a computer, but rather practical experience. More importantly, if there are any issues later, you know who to call. In the mass model, wood is sold by volume, according to the process, according to the system. At the local lumberyard, it is sold through connections. Sounds old-fashioned. Maybe. But in the woodworking industry, sometimes the old ways are the most durable. The second thing: life cycle thinking. Professional craftsmen don't look at 1 week. They look at 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. A warped door after 8 months may not cause the house to collapse, but it tarnishes the reputation. And reputation is something built over many years, lost in just one warranty call. So when they pay a little extra for each board, they are buying less time for adjustments, less risk of warping, less likely to be called back for rippers. They don't buy wood, they buy peace of mind. While large chains optimize for speed and sales, local lumber yards often optimize for stability and long-term relationships. Not always perfect. Not every place is good. But for many carpenters in 2026, this model brings them what they need: most control. And that's the key point. It's not that Home Depot is bad, but the demand of professional workers has surpassed the mass market model. In the end, we will talk about the most important thing: if you still have to buy from large chains, how to minimize the risk to the lowest level. The reality is that not everyone has a local lumber yard nearby. Not everyone has the time to run around selecting each lot. And sometimes you still have to step into Home Depot, push the cart to the lumber section, and accept the game. The issue is not to avoid it completely. The issue is to reduce risk to the lowest level. And this is the part that many seasoned craftsmen do very quickly, almost instinctively. First, examine along the length of the wood. Lift one end to eye level, looking straight from one end to the other. Don't trust the feeling of being placed on the shelf. A slight curve today can become a nightmare when framing. Second, prioritize straight, even grains. The more tangled the grain, the higher the risk of twisting when it shrinks. Straight grain is not sexy, but it is stable. And in the carpentry profession, stability always wins over initial beauty. Third, 3. Avoid large eyes near the edge or near the head of the sheet. Small, tight eyes located in the middle of the body are acceptable, but a large dead eye right at the edge, that is the crack waiting for an opportunity. Fourth, buy an extra 10 to 15%. It sounds like it will cost extra, but in reality, it's insurance. When you have extra, you are not forced to use a not-so-good one just because you're short. Freedom of choice is power. And finally, let the wood acclimate to the environment before construction. Don't buy today, cut tomorrow. Let it rest for a few days in the environment where it will be used. Give the wood time to acclimate to the actual humidity. You will be surprised by the difference. And here is the most important point. You cannot control the system. You cannot change the way large chains import goods, but you can completely control each of your decisions. Many craftsmen in 2026 no longer buy bulk wood because they don't want to play the guessing game anymore. But if you have to play strategically. Don't let cheap control you. Don't let the label make you too complacent too soon. Let experience, or at least careful observation, guide you. Because in the end, the structure doesn't collapse due to one big decision. It collapsed because of many seemingly harmless small decisions. At the end, we will piece the entire picture together, what is truly changing in the wood industry in 2026, and what that means for the future of those in the profession. If you find this perspective useful, stay with the channel. We haven't finished talking yet. So when we say millions of carpenters are no longer buying lumber at Home Depot in 2026, it is not an impulsive, rebellious movement. It is a quiet shift. No protests, no noisy boycotts. It's just that the longtime professionals are starting to reassess. They look at the humidity. They look at the wood grain. They look at how the wood is dried, displayed, and transported. And they wonder, is this risk worth it? What has changed is not just the quality of the wood. What has changed is the risk tolerance of the craftsman. When the cost of living increases, when competition is higher, when each project is tied to long-term reputation, they no longer accept betting on materials. Home Depot is still a strong system, still convenient, still meets the mass market demand. But the needs of professional craftsmen sometimes go beyond that mass market model. And perhaps this is the most important question. Are you buying based on price? Or are you buying based on the life cycle cost? Have you ever encountered a situation where the structure warped? After a few months, I would really like to hear about your real-life experience. Have you ever had issues with mass-produced wood? Or do you think everything is still fine? Please share in the comments because it's the real stories that clarify this picture. If you enjoy straightforward analyses delving into topics that few discuss in the construction and DIY industry, you can follow the channel to not miss the upcoming content. Here, we don't advertise for anyone, we just dissect the truth from the perspective of professionals. This video is not intended to attack or belittle any brand or retail system. The quality of the wood may vary depending on the region, time, and batch. The content is built on observations, market trends, and real-world experiences in the woodworking industry in 2026. The sole objective is to help viewers better understand the potential risks and make decisions that align with their needs. And remember, wood may just be a material, but the work you create is your reputation. See you in the next video.